Let's bring in political analyst Keith Leslie. Keith, how serious an escalation in the trade war are these auto tariffs?
Well, even though we knew they were coming, they're extremely serious. I mean, 25% on auto parts or on auto cars, whether fully, made outside the United States. And apparently, auto parts made in the United States are not going to be tariffed unless we put a tariff on them. So they'll be in the position at some point of having to determine what percentage of cars are made in Canada and what percentage need to be tariffed. I mean, it could just get crazy. But the overall first impact is going to be, and we hear this from the automotive experts in the industry, that within a week, the supply chain is going to be so ruptured that plants in both Canada and the United States, and perhaps Mexico as well, auto plants will have to shut down within a week because the north-south supply chain is how it's entirely based. And you can't just on a whim say, okay, well, we're just going to build them all in the United States. It's going to take years to get to that point.
I want to play a clip from Premier Ford. He spoke just moments ago on this issue. Let's all take a listen.
Costs are going to go skyrocketing. It keeps calling out countries. He's really pointing us out for the most part. Ontario, 50% of the parts within the vehicles are American. And, how do you dissect? They were showing me drawings today of all the different parts from all over the world, by the way, that goes in one vehicle. A lot are Canadian parts. A lot of Canadian companies they have plants down in the U.S. I understand they have approximately 127 plants employing over 50,000 people directly. So let's see how they can dissect it. I find it very, very difficult to believe that they can dissect every single part in an automobile by April the 2nd. Will be implemented on April the 3rd.
Keith, what do you make of the Premier's comments there? He seems to underscore the complexity of what Trump is proposing. Can it even be done?
Well, it's a very valid point. I mean, you're really trying to, remake the egg after you've scrambled it. I mean, how are we going to put all this? It just doesn't make sense at this point. So I think Premier is, we have to compare dollar for dollar tariffs. The Americans feel this pain right away as much as we do, so that hopefully they'll realize that the tariffs are bad for both sides. But right now, we're seeing Trump, we're seeing Premier Ford standing up. But you noticed he was very cautious tonight. He said he wants to let the Prime Minister make actual statements for dealing with Trump. He just wants to make sure that Canada stands back and fights hard. He won't say specifically how at this point.
How do you expect this to impact the federal election? We already heard from Carney today on the auto industry, almost like he knew this was coming. I'm not saying he did, but interesting timing that we're getting this announcement from Mark Carney and then Pierre Poilievre responding this afternoon. Do you think this takes the federal election in a different direction now that we have another direct threat to the Canadian economy?
I think it keeps the election pretty much in the same road that it was on all along, which is who's going to be the best leader or the best party to take on Donald Trump and his threatened tariffs and his whole 51st state talk. So I think today's tariffs just reinforce that more. This is an economic war that Trump has declared against Canada, and the election is really all about which of the two main parties, the Conservative Party of Canada or the Liberal Party of Canada, is the one who's going to be best suited to take on Donald Trump and his tariffs for the next 4 years.
All right, that's political analyst Keith Leslie. Keith, thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.